Hi and welcome to another LRCC Soundbite. For the next few weeks I'm going to tell you some stories about the life of a guy called Daniel. It's possible you might have heard of him. He's the one who ended up in a lion's den, but that story isn't for this week. To hear my thoughts on that, well, I'm afraid you're going to have to wait. No, this week we're going to meet Daniel first with some friends. There's 3 friends with him, 4 of them in total. So there's Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael and Azariah. All 4 are described as being either from the royal family of Judah or other leading Jewish families. And they were healthy, handsome, smart, wise and educated. With a bio like that, they must be set for life, shouldn't they? Well, things have a habit in these stories of never being quite that easy, do they? And that's because the land of Israel has been conquered by the Babylonian nation. The king, a guy called Nebuchadnezzar, he's asked his officials to find young men like Daniel and his friends and bring them to his palace where they are to be educated and trained to become royal officials in his court. It's not all bad, they're to be given 3 years of training during which they'll live in the palace, eat the same royal food as the king himself. They might have been taken away from their home into exile. But to give him his due, the king is doing his best to make them welcome and set them up in a new life in what he plans for them to be in their new home. So, all good, apart from one thing. Daniel and his friends have always tried to follow God's law, and there's a problem. You see, the customs in Babylon mean that the food being prepared and served to the king doesn't meet the requirements of Jewish law. So Daniel comes up with an idea. He says to the guard looking after them, "Can we have permission not to eat the royal food and wine, but instead just give us plain vegetables and water?" Now the guard thinks that Daniel's a good guy, but he's worried about how the king will react if these 4 start looking less healthy and less attractive than they were when they first came. So his immediate reaction is, "No, I'm sorry, that's not possible." But together he and Daniel come to a compromise. They agree that for the next 10 days they'll be allowed to trial living on just vegetables and water. And if they're okay, then we'll see. Suffice to say, after 10 days, they're actually looking much better and more, so much better than the others. So they carried on. Now, is this story about advocating becoming vegan? No, that's not actually the point it's trying to make. The point that it's trying to make is that following God's law is what's important. And these 4 friends only look so well because as followers of God's law, God is now looking after them. And they're following the Jewish law, but they're following it in difficult circumstances. But God is making sure they're okay. Now, 3 years later, these 4 are interviewed by the king. And he describes them as being 10 times better than anyone else at giving him advice. So they begin work in the court. Daniel has a special link with God as well. He's someone the Bible calls a prophet and gets messages directly from God. He's also described as being someone who can interpret what dreams mean. That's going to become really important in a week or two's time. Daniel and his friends trusted God. They trusted that God would look after them even if they didn't know what was going to come. To me, it's a great example of faith, a complete trust in God without knowing what's going to happen. Sometimes things come along in life and I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know how they're going to turn out, but as a Christian, I know I can leave the result with God. All he asks me to do is approach the situation in the way that he would want me to and act in the way that I believe he would. And I know that I'm in that place when I'm at peace with what I'm doing. And then we see where things go. We see where God leads, we see what happens, because I know God is in control. Of course, it's easy to say and it's much harder to do. But stories like this one and others in the Bible, they encourage me and show me how other people were able to do it. If they could do it, then why can't I? Why can't you? God bless you, and I'll see you next time.